Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another foot fetish. This is Gail from Burger Sewing and Vacuum in Manassas, Virginia. And today I'm going to talk about ruffling and gathering and pleating and all that fun sort of thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the ruffler foot, sometimes called a pleater, and then I'm going to turn the camera off for a little bit while I get set up. One of the things is these have not changed for probably about 100 years. This is the baby lock version of it, and this is more of a generic version of it. And if you have a baby lock, especially a Solaris or a Crescendo or one of those, you really need to get the baby lock one. And one thing I found out is that this plate, this little plate right here, is a little bit longer because the baby locks, these bigger baby locks, they have these feed dogs right in the front. And this was hitting wrong and making really bad noises. So I needed to go and make sure that I had a baby lock version of it. But otherwise, they're about the same. One of the things I love about these feeds, they can do so much. I like to look for old manuals, and you can see this is an old white manual. And it has all kinds of information about the ruffler, because a lot of times we don't really understand what everything is for. They have all kinds of levers and guides to do all kinds of fun stuff. And so some of these old books give you all kinds of information on how to pleat a ribbon, how to do a 6-stitch pleat, how to do a 12-stitch pleat, group pleating, all kinds of using the shirring plate on top of everything else, and piping and putting the piping in, and piping and pleating and gathering all at the same time. So they have all kinds of information on that. This is an old book. I don't even know if this is still in print. Learning and using your ruffler. So if you find that, grab that. And this is one that you can still get. And this is by my friend Deborah. She's up in Canada, and she has a website called Labors of Love, Labours. You can get right there, laborsoflove.com. And she's up in British Columbia. And you can still get this book, and you can also get it as a PDF download. So you can do that. But this is lovely information. Once again, how to use this ruffler, pleater, and all the different things that it can do. So those are some really fun things. If you get the baby lock version of it, they do have all the information on what everything is, as well as ways to do this. Now if you look at them, you notice that they're very similar. This one, this goes around your needle bar. This one's actually a snap-on, which is nice to have it a snap-on. This one you actually have to take your ankle off and put this on. But they have, you can see it has all these different guides. It has guides here, guides there. It has an area for piping to fit in and all kinds of stuff. But I'm going to talk about the basics of it. This one, the screw on the top, the farther down you screw it, the bigger the pleat you're going to get. For this one, it's down here. Same sort of thing though. The more you put it on, the deeper it is, the deeper your pleat's going to be, because this pushes this little pleater bar in and out. So you're going to have that. The baby lock one does have something else. It does have these little screws here. And this one is so you can move the whole foot forward and backwards. This one is side to side, because not all the baby locks are going to hold this at the right place. I learned that the hard way. I put it on my Solaris. I didn't even check to see where the hole was. I put my needle down and broke a needle. Luckily, all I did was break a needle. But know that you can move it east and west and north and south and get it on there. This one, it's just wherever it's at. But you can, but once again, on this one, you should be able to move your needle back and forth depending on where you want it. So otherwise, they're pretty much the same. But they have all these little places to put all kinds of stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off the camera for just a second. I'm going to get this foot on the machine, and then I'm going to show you how to use it. Okay, I'm back again. And I have the pleater on. Now make sure when you put it on, this goes around the needle bar. So remember I had the needle bar has to go in here. Now the fabric you're going to pleat is going to be put down this slot right here. And you can even put it through this little guide right down here to keep things going straight. Okay. Sometimes I need it on the phone. So what I did is I put this underneath, so it's, if you look on this on the side, I put the fabric that's to be pleated down through this little slot here. So it's on top of this, but underneath this part here. And I'm using this little guide here. So I put it underneath here to put that little guide in there, just so I can keep it straight, because sometimes it's just, my fabric wobbles and moves all over the place. So they do have all these different guides. And you can see now as it goes, I'm trying to put the camera at the side, you can see this little part going in and pleating. And the depth of the pleat has to do with this little screw, as well as your stitch length. So the longer the stitch length and the more this is screwed in, the more pleating you're going to have. So you'll have to set that up depending on, do I want a 2-to-1, do I want a 3-to-1, what you want. But you can see it does these nice, beautiful little pleats. And these you can do, like this is a pillow that I put some puffing on. Can't really see it. Let's put it back here maybe. But I gathered on both sides of this. So I gathered on both sides, and that's what is commonly referred to as puffing. Now what's nice about this pleating foot or ruffler is that, and I'm going to make that needle go up, is if I happen to put a piece of fabric all the way underneath, so I'm going to lift this up and put it completely underneath. Now I'm not going to go through any of the guides today. Usually I would try and put it in a guide and I would start it all off correctly instead of just doing it this way. But now what I can do is I can sew along, and it is sewing the pleat down onto this fabric. You notice this is moving a lot more than the other one. And what's nice about this, and I'm going to stop this right here and pull it out, is this way you can see at the very beginning I was just doing these nice little beautiful little pleats. And then this way I actually sewed the pleat onto the fabric. So that works out really well. The other thing I forgot to talk about is this up here. If I move this, and you can lift this up, I'll do it on my other one. You can see it on here, it's easier to do. This one, it says 1. That means it's going to pleat every single stitch. This one says 6, so it's going to pleat only every 6th stitch, every 12th stitch, or not at all. So you could actually leave this on and do some straight stitching. That's how they do those group pleats. They'll do like 3 or 4 together, then put it at 0 and sew for an inch or so, and then move it back. So you can keep moving this back and forth to get the different number of pleats. Now the other thing you can do, and I'm going to grab some more fabric, is you can actually have a piece of fabric underneath. I'll put a piece of fabric underneath. I could have the fabric that I want to gather going down through here. Have to get it underneath there. And I could have another piece of fabric on top, and I kind of have to move this all out of the way. I said sometimes I feel like I have to have 5 arms to do this. So now what it's going to do is it is going to pleat the middle piece and sew on the other 2 pieces. And this is one of those, and you can see that it's really pulling this one in a lot more, and I'm just trying to guide it. This is where, if you know how to use all the different guides on here, it will help, because then you could, be putting your piping in, you could be putting your lace on and doing everything all in one step, because, when we do this all in one step, and you can cut out some steps, that's really nice. So I'm just going to sew this down. Okay, and I'm going to just pull it out now. And now what we have here is we have it sewn between 2 pieces of fabric. So this is what you'd see, say, on a pillow. So I have, this is the inside. You can see the pleated ones in the middle. This is flat, and it's all sewn together. How fun is that? Okay, so now I'm going to take this foot off. Actually, I should take the foot off first, and then take my plate off. Okay, so I got that off. I love how the baby lock one is a snap-on. Now I'm going to talk about this foot. Now this foot is called a gathering foot. Sometimes times it may be called a shirring foot. Now, I'm sewing on the Solaris today, a Solaris 2, and the Solaris is a high shank machine, so I have to do an adapter to make it a low shank machine. Now, here's this for the gathering foot instructions. Now, one thing I want you to look at is this is the shirring foot. Now, you have to screw it on. It doesn't have a snap-on. Now, snap-on feet, when they snap on, they'll wobble. They'll wobble back and forth because the feet, such as this one, it's going to be on there, and it's going to wobble to go up and down over hills. Well, when you're doing your shirring foot, your gathering foot, it doesn't have to go up and down hills. But one thing you'll notice is that underneath, it only has this little tiny part here that's hitting some of the feed dogs. Okay? So what happens is these little feed dogs, they pull the fabric underneath, but because this is not hitting the feed dogs don't pull the fabric out the back. And, when I've talked about feet before, it's always about the relationship between the feet and the feed dogs. And I'm going to make sure that this is on nice and tight. So I'm going to make sure that that's on nice and tight, and it's where I want it to be. So what's going to happen is it's going to pull the fabric underneath the foot, but it will not be able to, but it's not going to pull the fabric out from underneath that foot. So if I put this in there, and once again, if you look on, and they give you this little sheet here, and it talks about stitch length, longest setting tension between a 6 and a 9. Normal sewing, they have it at a 4. So this is way tight, and the stitch length, I'm going to make it go up pretty high. You could even do a basting stitch if you had a basting stitch on your machine. Now when you start to sew, I find that if I put my finger behind the foot, it makes it gather up even more. So I'm just sewing along. Oh, I have it at a really slow speed, but you can see, look at how it is just gathering that up. Look at how beautiful that is. A really nice tight gather. And once again, depending on your fabric, if it's really sheer, it's going to gather up a lot more than, say, this cotton. This is a cotton batik, but it will gather it up for you. And you could do your puffing with that. You can just do ruffles with it. You can do whatever you want with that, and it's going to gather it up for you just beautifully. I love these feet. Now another thing, this one does have a slot in it. A little slot right there. If I can get this in right, and once again, I usually don't do it after I've started gathering. Let me give it some slack there so I can get that fabric in. And this is going to be not that, let me get that in. It's always nice. Let me get my hand out of the way so you can actually see what's going on. Oh, it's kind of glary, isn't it? But you can see that it's gathering up the lower part, but not the upper part. But you have to be careful about trying to keep that fabric over. You don't have a really big seam allowance. Let me try and keep that fabric going straight there. You can see that, and I'll pull that out. You do better when you're not sewing on camera. Usually mine's a little bit straighter than that, but you can gather and sew onto fabric at the same time. I have a tendency to just gather it up and then pin it on later because I may have to adjust the ruffles a little bit. But those are the two different feet that you can get that will give you the ability to gather and put on some fabric in one step instead of having to do the old-fashioned pull the thread and break it and have to start over again. So until next time, happy sewing.